been some pushback and some criticism about Meri meeting with her friends. I've heard people talk about it and say, oh, this felt like a therapy session and I'm tired of everybody pretending to be therapists. You don't have to be a therapist. See, the funny thing about being in relationships, you don't need a license or a degree to have a relationship. You don't have to, you have to have a license to get married, but you don't have to have a license to have children. You don't have to have a license to be a parent. You don't have to have a license to be a friend. You don't have to have a license to give an advice or your perspective on things. Part of the problem that we have is that we rely too heavily on the idea of this pop psychology notion that you can diagnose everybody in some clinical term. The reality of it is that these ladies are having this conversation, they're giving their honest opinion and their honest take on what these issues are in Meri's life and how she can get past this problem that she has. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out, because I like to throw my opinion into this conversation or into this discourse, there were a couple points that were raised during the course of this conversation that I thought are important and need some kind of light shined on them. One of the things that was talked about was the very idea that once Kody left, he's going to realize at some later point that he made some tragic mistake by not wanting to be with Meri, and he's going to have this deep regret, and that in itself gave Meri a sense of hope. Now, I want to talk about specifically why I think that this might not necessarily be the most positive thing to say. The same advice I would give to somebody, or observation, I won't even call it advice. This is the same observation I would have for somebody who has lost somebody who is important to them, and somebody comes behind to try to give them their condolences about that loss, and they say something to the effect of, well, everything happens for a reason, they're better off, that kind of thing. There's some things that just don't play well and are probably not the most appropriate thing to say to folks. And that's just how I feel about this particular conversation. Why do I feel that way? I've said it before, that at some point Kody's going to look back, and after Robin left him and she ripped his guts out and she took all his financial money away and left him in poverty and gave him his greatest fear, he's going to look back and regret the fact that he had 3 women who were down for him, and he's going to be upset about it. The truth of it is, Kody's never going to do that. Kody's never going to look back on his life and be self-reflective, because if you are going to actually do this type of thing, you're going to participate in this kind of activity, you have to have the ability to critically look at your decisions and recognize error in your decision-making and the choices that you've made. And I haven't seen any evidence of where Kody has been on the show and said, you know what? When I decided to do this, I made a terrible mistake. Now, he may skirt it a little bit by dressing, what do you say, putting lipstick on a pig, by saying that, oh, I made a mistake when I married Meri. But it's always couched in, I made a mistake in marrying Meri because she's a horrible person. And I didn't realize it because I was so innocent and I didn't realize that she's a horrible person. So essentially, he's not taking responsibility for marrying Meri or a woman he doesn't love. He's blaming her or the system or the church for forcing him to marry somebody he doesn't love and didn't want to be with and didn't add to his life. So let's take a listen to the sample of these ladies talking about Kody having this deep regret. And we'll talk about it on the other side, because there's another point I want to make in connection to this.
I think one day he'll realize what he lost.
I think so too.
He'll miss you. Don't you think?
I mean, I think he's probably already started to.
You think?
I do, yeah. What's not to miss, Meri? Like,
I would agree.
You're an incredible human. I think you'll always be in his heart.
I would agree. That's probably why he was crying.
That's probably why he was crying, because he missed you. Yeah, okay. I don't think that Kody misses Meri. I don't think Kody's ever going to look back and feel bad or feel remorse about not being with Meri. And the reason I say that, I'm not trying to be mean. When it comes to Kody, as he's looking at his life, he doesn't see the value of having the Meri around. And because he doesn't see value in Meri, that doesn't mean she's not valuable. It just means that he doesn't see the value in her. And he doesn't see the value in having her in his life. Because if he did, he could easily pick the phone up, because you could tell by the way she's sitting there smiling that he could have picked up the phone and he could get her back like that if he was so interested or so inclined to do so. She was waiting for him for years to come back or come around. And she even said it to him. There's a tape of him, I would pull it, but it'd be too much on the video, where she said to him, "I'm waiting for you to come around." And he said, "I'm not coming." He said to her straight up, "I'm not coming. I have zero interest in being with you." Now, part of the reason why I don't necessarily care for this particular conversation with these ladies is because their conversation, knowing that she is susceptible to going back to him and that she wants to be with him, they're actually encouraging her to wait and keep herself available. Because if he's missing you now, and he's regretting leaving you now, then there's a possibility that he may come back around. Now, when he comes back around because you want him to come back around, then that means that you're going to have to make sure that you're available for him when he comes back around. It's that mentality that has kept her on the hook for so long to this point, where she sits around and talks about being 52 years old and not necessarily having any other options. And now, she waited so long, and now she's been with him for 30 years and she's been committed to him for 30 years. Let's take a listen to what she had to say with regard to that.
I'm 52 years old.
You have so much life.
You know what
to
I mean?
live.
Like, I could have been like 45.
I know.
You know what I mean? Or whatever. Like,
It doesn't make it any easier, though.
And that's the point. Like, you were 52 years old. You could have been 45 when you left, but you're still kind of holding on to the relationship because you hope and you think it might work out and he might come back around. And that would mean that you didn't waste the last 30 years of your life. So if you just wait a little bit longer, maybe you can recapture that time and make it all worth it. Here's the problem, though. You were 45 when you could have left that first time, but now you're 52. There's nothing you can do about that 45 to 52 time frame. That time is gone. What? Time can be spent, time can be wasted, time can be saved, but you can't recapture time, you can't recoup time. Time is something you can never get back. So what you need to do is, instead of focusing on that last 8 you had, focus on your next 8. Focus on today. Today is the day that you could do something about. You can make changes in your life today that will affect your tomorrows. But there's nothing you can do about what you did yesterday or how you went through things yesterday. So sitting there lamenting about the decisions you made, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, and how sad you are that you wasted all this time does nothing for you at all. If anything, it should just be a lesson that, okay, I wasted a lot of time on this person. Moving forward, I'm not wasting time with people. I'm not going to sit there and try to fix folks. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about, Meri saying that she could have actually made this relationship work between her and Kody. You were never in a position where you could make the situation work between you and Kody. But this is what she had to say.
I think that there's a way that Kody and I could have figured out our relationship and our marriage.
You were never going to figure out how to make this relationship work. You were never going to be in a situation where you were going to become the thing that Kody wanted. I've said before, and I stand on this, in order for Meri to make this relationship work, one of two things would have to happen. One, she would have to wake up one morning and be Robin, which is not going to happen. The one thing that she can do to make this relationship work so that she could be with Kody, so that she could stay in this family and stay in this relationship with him is this. She would have to do what he wants. You would have to become the thing that he wants you to be. Now, the thing that he wants you to be is not a place of fairness. It's not a place of equality. It's not a place of love. It's not a place of reciprocal actions, feelings, or anything else. What it is a place where he can use you. He'll keep you around as long as you do what he wants you to do when he wants you to do it. Disappear when he wants you to disappear. Come around when he wants you to come around. Have your bank book and your check ready and be able to feed him and his family the way he wants to be fed. He wants to use you. So if you're willing to turn over all autonomy and allow him to use you and take advantage of you, he's more than willing to have a relationship with you. All day he'll have a relationship with you. He won't respect you. He won't see you as a partner. He won't see you as a wife. And you could throw the whole idea of equality clean out the damn window. But you'll be around if that's what you want. But see, I suspect that that's not what you want. And there's a point, too, where they talked about suffering. You know, they had a whole thing where they said that in their faith and their beliefs, you know, it's taught to them that if they suffer or they feel things are unfair and they feel jealousy, then that's actually an attribute of the religion. It's helping them to get closer to God and to develop this deeper understanding of themselves so that they can, you know, kind of hone themselves to be prepared for the afterlife. When you start talking about suffering, there's a feeling that if you suffer enough, you will be rewarded. In my opinion, she feels like if she can display that she has suffered so much because of Kody, because of her loyalty to Kody and her dedication to Kody, that Kody is going to recognize the fact that she has been put out, she's been hurt, and she suffered so much, and he's going to reward her by elevating her into the relationship. He's going to say, wow, she was really committed to the relationship, and I love that about her. The truth of the matter is, this never happens. This doesn't happen in romantic relationships. If your man and your wife is putting you through it and you're sitting there taking it, the only thing that's happening is they're getting accustomed to putting you through it. They're not going to change. They're not going to get better. They're not going to change their mind. They're not going to realize how much they're making you suffer. The only thing they're going to do is say, you know what? I get a benefit from you suffering. I like this benefit. And after a while, they start to take that benefit for granted and they expect you to do it as an expectation. This is no longer even a gift or a choice. This is what you're supposed to do. So your suffering becomes something that's mandatory and necessary for that relationship to function. If you all of a sudden say, you know what, I don't like suffering, I don't want to go through this hard time, they're going to turn around and say, why are you trying to ruin our relationship? What is wrong with you? Are you crazy? This even applies to jobs. Like you're sitting there on a job and you feel like, okay, I'm going to just, come in. I'm going to be the quiet soldier. I'm not going to tell anybody what I'm doing. They just going to keep shifting work to me. And I'm just going to sit here and do it. And they're going to realize how hard I'm working. If your boss, if you're not saying something, if you're not letting them know what it is you're doing, if it's not a problem, they don't see it 9 times out of 10. If there's a problem that arises and you solve that problem and that problem never touches them, they're not aware of it, they don't have to deal with it, they don't know how bad it could have been. A lot of them don't deal with, especially some supervisors and even people in relationships, they don't know how bad the problem is unless the problem explodes. And even if they look at the probability and how bad it could have been, well, it didn't happen, so it's not real. So you always have to keep them in pace, and you have to be aware of what's going on. And you don't sit there and suffer, and you most certainly don't sit there and suffer in silence. So I have an issue with that. And especially as we're talking about time, your time spent, time invested, and your level of suffering is not going to get you closer to the person who you're with. Because if they cared about either one of those things, your time invested, loyalty, they cared about your suffering, they wouldn't sit around and watch you suffer. Now, there's another point where they start talking about the disparagement between monogamy and polygamy. This is what Meri had to say about polygamy.
I think there's a way that you can live plural marriage and everybody be okay. You don't think that? You don't?
I've never seen it work.
Really?
I don't know anyone happily married in polygamy.
Maybe I'm just like wishful thinking.
See, that's the problem. Meri wants the polygamy thing to work. You suffer so long, you don't even realize how much you suffer sometimes. She thinks that this is a normal state of affairs. And this is part of the reason why, even though we criticize the Brown family for putting themselves on TV and all that other stuff and putting the kids through it, one of the benefits that the Brown family has that a lot of people who are in similar situations to Meri and other OG3 and even Kody and Robin is that they've been touched by people on the outside. They've have other influences on their life. So they recognize that some of this stuff isn't right, isn't natural. If you're surrounded by people who live this way, it's normalized and you think this is how everybody lives. So Meri will sit there and argue, I think that polygamy could work. And I think it's a good idea. Meri was trying to justify it to herself. And part of the reason why she's trying to justify it is because she's trying to make a lane where Kody can come back, where Kody could do it. I think Kody is the kind of man who could make polygamy work, and I'm willing to try. She knows that this relationship wasn't working out, but she's willing to make excuses and say that it could work out in hopes that it will work out and that Kody will come back around. Now, her counter argument that I thought was funny was actually this when she was talking about monogamy.
And yet, are there monogamous husband and wife that are completely happy all the time?
I don't have to wonder if my husband loves sleeping with me more than someone else. I don't have to wonder if my husband's going to provide for a different wife more than me. There's so much survival that's not met that it's hard to find and connect with each other because you're constantly in survival.
Now, I don't necessarily disagree with the whole premise that the young lady laid out about survival mode. You always trying to outdo each other and try to make sure that you have your needs met within these relationships. I don't disagree with that. I would say this, though. Let's talk about the core premise of what Meri said. She said always happy. Monogamists have to always be happy. Nobody's always happy. If you're always happy, you're insane. You need to talk to somebody because nobody is always happy. Just like you shouldn't always be sad. Either way, it's a problem. Excess or too much of anything is a bad thing. You're going to have struggles in monogamy. And just because you have some struggles in monogamy doesn't mean that you just compare it to polygamy because the struggles are different. You don't have all the problems that you would have in a monogamous relationship. And on top of that, you're also dealing with jealousy, envy. You're dealing with the lack of time and attention and affection that you would have in your relationship because your husband is actively spending that time with somebody else. There's also a real point when you talk about polygamy that you can't help how you feel. I mean, I wish it was a thing where you could have the discipline, you could discipline yourself to the point where you can control your emotions and how you feel about somebody. You can control and have discipline on acting on those feelings. That's completely a different thing, and it's understandable. But you can't control how you feel about people. So in Kody's case, it's not his fault that he was in a situation where he was married to Meri, Janelle, and Christine. And then when Robin came into his life, he fell in love with Robin. There was nothing he could do to control that. He can't go home and decide, I'm not going to be in love with Robin. The only thing he could decide to do is not act on that. But when you guys roll the red carpet out for him and allow him to, go over to her house and court her for months on end and sit up on her couch, supposedly after he drove 3 or 4 hours to spend the weekend with her, and he's spending 2 or 3 days back to back with her and only spending one night a week with you, then you're opening the door for him to be able to develop those attachments and for him to be able to act on those feelings that he's starting to develop. There's something else that I wanted to say. As men, because that's one of the things Kody's always said. Like when he gets with the fellas, he starts talking about men and man stuff and, how men deal with things. And, I'm a leader and I'm a lead because I'm the man. Sometimes there are guys, especially in what's known as the manosphere, where they're so focused on being the leaders of their families that they don't focus on what their family is going to actually look like. They so worry about, I'm going to find somebody who's going to let me lead and be submissive to my will. And I have a plan. I'm a man with a plan. And I'm going to come in and she has to get on my program and my plan. See, that's where, in my opinion, the relationship between Kody and the OG3 has differed from the relationship with Kody and Robin. Why do I say that? When Kody was a young man and he met Meri and Janelle and Christine, he was a young man who didn't have resources. He was a man who was meeting these ladies on equal plane and equal footing. So he didn't come into the relationship as the man with the plan. He came into the relationship as an equal partner who was working with these other ladies, trying to figure it out and make it happen. Now, when he was able to be with Robin, Robin's relationship with him fed his ego. He was able to find somebody who he could take care of. He could be the man, and she was going to jump on his plan because she was a person who didn't have her own resources. She wasn't able to take care of herself. She wasn't able to provide for herself and do the things she wanted to do for herself. She wanted more, and he was able to provide those things to her. So he became the provider for Robin, and by being the provider, he allowed her to eat off his plate. And because she was eating off his plate, in 10 or 15 years, when he turns around and he starts complaining about how she's not appreciative and she's not grateful and she only used me for the stuff that I had, bro, you have to recognize the fact that she wasn't with you because she wanted to be with you, because she wanted to get on your plan and she wanted to help you out, and you had this great direction. She was with you because she was needy and she needed things from you. She needed resources. She needed provision. And you were the person who was able to provide those things to her. So there's a different type of relationship that's going on. With the OG3, I've always said that part of the problem that he has with the OG3 and part of the reason why those relationships will never work out is because when Kody sees himself now as he's dealing with Robin, he sees himself as the savior. He sees himself as the provider. He sees himself as the protector. He sees himself as the leader. When he was dealing with the OG3, he didn't lead. Okay, it was a democracy, and they did have equal say. And I've even said it before, and I'm willing to take the challenge, the Pepsi challenge, that betting dime to donuts, that when they were married, during the course of their marriage, I'm willing to bet that Janelle was making a majority of the money. And if she wasn't making a clear majority of the money every month, she had the most consistent check coming in the house, which provided the consistency that they needed so that they could make decisions and choices, financial choices they needed to make. So just on a financial end, they were more equal. And the bigger problem that he has with the OG3 is that they remember who he was. With Robin, he gets to be the man. He gets to be the hero. He gets to be the savior. He gets to be the white knight. With these other women, they remember when he was broke and the three of them or the four of them would sit around the dining room table and cry because they trying to figure out how to pay their bills, or cry because it's Christmas time and you're not sure how you're going to be able to do it and put food on the table and presents under the tree. That's a different experience. And because there's a different experience there, again, this is something when you look back on your life, if you are a reflective person and an honest broker, you would look back on your life and say, they were not only important, they were critical for me to be the man that I am today. But if you are not a reflective person, then you're not a compassionate person. You're not a considerate person. You don't consider other people's feelings. You're not going to look back on those times and say, you know what? We all struggled together. We made it together. And I am the man I am today because of them. You're going to look back on your life and all those struggles, and you're going to say, wow, I am the man I am today despite them. I am the man I am today, even though they were holding me back. I could have been this guy who I knew I always was, because that's part of the thing too. He thinks that he always was this guy. You know, I used to have a thing I used to say all the time, like, I'm a rich man living a poor man's life. He believes that shit. So he always thought that he was going to be a star, that he was going to be famous, the center of attention. And these women, because he didn't have those things back when he was first dealing with them, they were holding him back. And this is part of the reason why I said in the beginning that when the women are sitting around talking about, oh, he misses you, he's going to look back and be so sad. That's why I don't think he's going to look back and think that he's missing out on something by not being with Meri, and he's going to feel like he should be with Meri and he regrets not being with her. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that I'm onto something? You think I'm full of bunk? I want to have the big conversation. So leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think, what your take is. If you guys liked the video, go ahead, give me the thumbs up. Not yet subscribed? Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Give me the HBO special, which stands for Help a Brother Out Special, by subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much. That's my take. I'm James. This has been My Take on Reality, and I'm out.
'Cause I've been living life